Sloane Westfield hadn't meant to glance down at the small folded piece of paper like it held the power to change the trajectory of her entire life. But the moment her fingers brushed the crisp edge and she pulled it free from the glittery bowl, her breath hitched. She knew even before unfolding it. Knew. In the way a person senses a moment too heavy with meaning, too charged with inevitability. She opened it anyway. Daniela Morrison. Her heart stopped. Literally, she felt the pause in her chest like the silence before an earthquake. Then it resumed, far too fast, pounding against her ribs like it was trying to claw its way out. No, she whispered under her breath, eyes wide. No freaking way. The office around her buzzed with the low murmur of coworkers swapping names and already gossiping about who got who, but Sloane was deaf to it all. She could only stare at the name in her hand, perfectly printed in the clean, sharp script of their office administrator. The CEO. She had drawn the actual CEO. The queen of the 30th floor. The woman who walked through the building in tailored suits like she was born in them, who spoke in smooth, quiet tones that somehow always made the room go silent, who barely looked at anyone unless they had $1 million pitch to deliver. The woman Sloane had secretly, guiltily, devastatingly admired for 2 whole years. No, not admired. She corrected herself grimly. Wanted. Craved. Obsessed over. She sat slowly in her cubicle chair, hand limp on her desk, the slip of paper still clutched in stunned fingers. She didn't even notice her coworker Jamie plopped down in the seat across from her until a crumpled napkin hit her shoulder. You look like someone just told you Santa isn't real. Worse, Sloane murmured. I got Danny. Jamie blinked. Danny Morrison? Sloane didn't answer, just held up the slip with a shaky hand. Jamie let out a low whistle. Damn. Good luck topping her wine cellar. Or her car. Or the literal Picasso in her office. I'm screwed. Sloane dropped her head onto the desk. I can't even afford lunch today, Jamie. Jamie snorted, patting her back. Maybe just knit her a scarf. Rich people love authentic stuff. But Sloane didn't laugh. Because underneath the panic, there was a deeper, more visceral fear. She didn't just want to impress Danny. She wanted her to see her. Notice her. She wanted the CEO's gaze to linger not because Sloane was babbling through a presentation, but because there was something there, something magnetic, inexplicable. Something mutual. God. She was pathetic. For the next week, Sloane spiraled. She combed through articles, press interviews, obscure business blogs, anything that mentioned Danny Morrison in a personal context. She found next to nothing. The woman was a fortress. Until, buried in a 2014 online magazine interview, Sloane stumbled across a single quote about how Danny, during law school, had loved reading The Secret History. Dark academia before it was trendy, Danny had said. I still have my first copy. That was it. One sentence. But it was something. And once the idea took root, Sloane couldn't let it go. She spent 3 nights hunting down a first edition. It cost more than her weekly groceries. She bought it anyway. Wrapped it in deep green paper, tied it with black ribbon, and stuck a small note inside the cover. For the stories we carry, and the ones we hide. Your secret Santa, she told herself. It was thoughtful. Personal. A risk, but a calculated one. On the day of the gift exchange, the office was a winter wonderland of garish lights and peppermint-scented chaos. People laughed, unwrapped presents, posed for selfies with reindeer antlers. Sloane tried not to throw up. She placed her gift on the table marked Daniela Morrison and immediately walked away, her palms sweating. She told herself she wouldn't look for Danny, that she'd drop her own gift in the box, smile politely, and go back to her desk. But then someone handed her a small, pale box with a gold ribbon. Sloane Westfield. The intern chirped, and Sloane's hands froze. She hadn't expected anything special. Maybe a cute mug, or some hand lotion. She sat at her desk, heart still rattling in her chest, and opened the box. Inside was velvet. Velvet and gold. A delicate rose gold ring rested in the center, cradled like a secret. A single green stone gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Peridot. Her birthstone. She'd mentioned it once. Once. In a meeting, offhandedly, during a joke about astrology signs and quarterly KPIs. There was no way anyone remembered that. No one except. Her fingers trembled as she picked up the tiny card. The handwriting was elegant, spare. Just one line. For someone who deserves to be noticed.
D.
Her lungs stopped working. She turned toward the 30th floor, but the glass office was too high, too far. Still, her gaze found the sleek silhouette near the railing above, arms crossed, eyes down. And Danny Morrison was looking at her. Not just glancing, watching. Like she'd been waiting. Like the gift wasn't a coincidence. Like maybe, just maybe, Sloane hadn't been the only one paying attention. Her throat tightened. Her thoughts raced. What did it mean? What could it mean? She was just a low-level analyst. Danny was Danny. This was insane. And yet she couldn't look away. Sloane told herself it didn't mean anything. That the ring was just a coincidence. That Danny, Ms. Morrison, she corrected herself sternly, was simply being generous. Maybe she'd asked her assistant to dig up fun facts about her employees to make the Secret Santa more personal. Maybe she'd picked the ring because it was elegant, appropriate, and green. Just a color.
Just a detail.
Except it wasn't. And it never had been. Because from the moment Sloane slipped that ring onto her finger, a perfect fit, damn her, she hadn't been able to breathe quite right. The card was still in her purse, folded and refolded so many times it was starting to tear at the edges. She read it every night like it might change, like it might suddenly say something clearer, something bolder, something undeniable. For someone who deserves to be noticed. That line haunted her. It echoed in her head every time she passed Danny's glass office. Every time she caught a flash of navy blue fabric and felt her stomach twist. Every time Danny walked by and Sloane felt the weight of her gaze settle over her skin like warm silk. She'd never been on the receiving end of that gaze for this long. Not like this. A week passed. The holiday decorations were starting to come down. The sparkle and sugar of the office had dulled, but the tension had not. It grew between them, a low hum just beneath the surface. In meetings, Danny asked for Sloane's opinion more often. In the elevator, Danny didn't look at her phone. She looked at her. And Sloane was drowning in it. Every glance, every silence, every carefully measured pause before Danny's voice brushed against her name, it all made her ache. And she didn't know what to do with that ache. Until Thursday. The email came at 6:17 p.m. sharp. Subject line, follow-up on Secret Santa. Her heart stopped. Again. From Daniela Morrison. I believe we need to clarify a few things. Would you be available for dinner tomorrow evening?
Discreetly.
No explanation. No signature beyond the D. Sloane stared at her screen for so long her monitor went dark. She jolted back to life and reread the message 10 times. Then she did something completely unlike herself.
She said yes.
When Friday night arrived, she almost didn't go. She stood in front of her closet for 45 minutes, pulling dress after dress, trying to decode the situation. What do you wear to a dinner with the CEO who may or may not have flirted with you via jewelry? What does discreetly mean? Did that imply romance? Privacy? Or was it just about office decorum? She settled on something simple, black, flattering, safe. She told herself it wasn't a date. And then she spent the Uber ride mentally preparing for it to be exactly that. The restaurant was intimate, dimly lit, expensive. The kind of place you only knew about if you knew someone. Danny was already there when Sloane arrived, seated at a corner table with her back to the room. When she looked up, Sloane forgot how to breathe. Danny wasn't in one of her usual suits. She was wearing a charcoal gray sweater, soft-looking, hugging the lines of her shoulders and collarbones in a way that felt dangerously personal. Her hair was down, her expression unreadable, and yet her eyes lit up, just a flicker, when they landed on Sloane. You came, Danny said quietly. I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't, Sloane admitted, sliding into the seat across from her. I thought it might be inappropriate. Danny tilted her head. Is it? You tell me. For a moment, the only sound was the quiet clink of glasses and the low murmur of voices around them. Then Danny leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes locked on hers. "I didn't put your name in the bowl," she said. "It wasn't planned. But you gave me that ring." Danny's gaze didn't falter. "Yes." "Why?" Danny exhaled slowly. "Because I listened," she said. "Because I noticed you." Sloane's throat tightened. "You don't even know me." "I know more than you think." She paused, then added more carefully, "I know you work late even when no one asks you to. I know you always take the seat by the window in meetings because you get restless in closed spaces. I know you eat pistachio macarons on bad days. I know your laugh is real when it crinkles your nose. I know you're smart and thoughtful and better at your job than half the men in your department combined." Sloane blinked, stunned. Danny's voice had gone softer with every word, but never less sure. "I know I shouldn't be saying any of this," Danny said finally. "But when I saw your name on the envelope that day, I didn't care. I saw an opening. So I took it." The table between them suddenly felt impossibly small. The air was thick. Sloane could hear the rush of her own heartbeat in her ears. "And the ring?" she asked, almost whispering. "Was that an opening too?" "No," Danny shook her head. "That was a confession." Sloane couldn't move, couldn't breathe,
Couldn't speak.
because in every scenario she'd played out in her head, this moment, this honesty, wasn't supposed to happen. "Say something," Danny murmured, voice taut now, suddenly unsure. "Tell me if I've crossed a line." Sloane stared at her, heart thudding. "You have," she said quietly. Danny's face tightened. "But I don't want you to step back from it." Danny froze. And then, slowly, something shifted.
Her shoulders eased.
Her lips curved, not into a smile. Exactly, but something deeper. Rawer. More hopeful. "Then we have a problem," she said. "Because I don't want to stop walking forward." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was electric. Something had changed. Something had begun. And as the waiter approached, and Sloane realized neither of them had touched their menus, she understood something with terrifying clarity. This wasn't about a holiday gift. This was something else entirely. Something dangerous. Something real. Sloane didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, one hand resting lightly on the velvet jewelry box now tucked in her nightstand, the ring still on her finger like a secret she couldn't stop touching. The dinner played on a loop in her mind. Danny's voice, low and sure. Her words, too honest. The moment Sloane had told her not to step back. Had she really said that? Had she meant it?
God, yes.
And now there was no undoing it. No pretending this was innocent. No taking it back. Monday arrived with a strange sense of stillness, the kind that comes right before something breaks. The office buzzed with the usual morning chaos, but Sloane felt oddly separate from it, like she was moving through a dream. Every email, every ping, every meeting, it all faded into the background, eclipsed by one singular awareness. Danny was somewhere in the building. And eventually, they would have to look at each other again. After what had been said. After what had been felt. The first time their eyes met that morning, it happened in the break room. Sloane had gone in for coffee, hoping to avoid everyone, when the door opened and in walked Danny. Time stilled. Her hair was pulled back, her navy suit crisp as always, but there was something different, something in her eyes. Like she was waiting for Sloane to speak first. But Sloane couldn't. Could barely breathe. Danny paused, looked at the coffee machine, then back at her. "How was your weekend?" she asked, voice perfectly casual, only the smallest flicker of heat beneath the surface. "Love what you've seen so far, and want to help me keep creating these awesome stories on this channel? Then subscribe and hit the bell. Your subscription supports the channel and makes sure you get more exciting stories." "Uneventful," Sloane lied. "Yours?" "Busy." They stood in silence for a moment, the hum of the refrigerator louder than it should have been. Then Danny's gaze dropped, just for a second, to Sloane's hand, where the ring still gleamed. Danny said nothing, but when their eyes met again, it was all there. "I see you. I remember. I haven't changed my mind." Sloane swallowed hard and fled. The next few days were torture. Their interactions remained professional, measured, polite. But there was something between them now, a thread pulled too tight. In meetings, Sloane found herself anticipating the way Danny would look at her before she spoke. In the elevator, she felt Danny's presence like static electricity. Everything was the same, and none of it was. By Thursday, the office was hosting its final holiday event, a half-hearted gathering in the main lobby with leftover cookies, lukewarm cider, and garlands that had started to shed glitter like confetti. Sloane almost skipped it. She hated crowds. She hated pretending. But Jamie dragged her in with the promise of free champagne and a desperate need to vent about HR. Sloane barely heard a word. She was too busy scanning the room, heart beating out of rhythm, until there. Danny, near the staircase, laughing softly at something a board member said, one hand in her pocket, the other holding a glass of something dark and expensive. She looked radiant.
Calm.
In control. Untouchable. And then her eyes found Sloane across the room. And they stayed. Sloane's pulse skittered. She turned quickly, suddenly breathless, and pretended to sip her drink. God, Jamie muttered beside her. She looked at you like she wants to eat you. Shut up, Sloane hissed. I'm going to combust. Jamie snorted. Good. Then I won't be the only one burning in this hellscape of awkward office parties. 20 minutes later, Sloane tried to sneak out. She slipped toward the side hallway that led to the service elevator, head down, coat half on, when she stopped dead. There, hanging innocently from the arched doorway between two offices, was a mistletoe. Subtle, decorative, corporate approved, but unmistakable. And standing beneath it, blocking her exit, was Danny. Sloane froze. Did you know that's there? She asked weakly. Of course. Danny's voice was quiet. I had it put up last year. No one noticed. That seems reckless. Not really. No one ever walks this way. Except me. Exactly. The air snapped tight between them. Sloane could feel her pulse in her throat. This isn't smart, she whispered. Danny nodded.
No.
It's not. But you're not moving. Neither are you. And before Sloane could stop herself, before she could think or talk herself down, she stepped forward. Just once. Just enough. Danny leaned in. Her hand brushed Sloane's cheek, soft and fleeting, like a question. And then she kissed her. It was light, quick, barely more than a breath. But it left Sloane trembling. When they pulled back, neither of them spoke. The silence said too much. Danny's gaze flicked to the mistletoe above them. Tradition, she murmured. Sure, Sloane breathed. But they both knew. That wasn't about tradition. That was about need. About want pressed into the shape of a kiss too small to contain it. Sloane turned and walked away before she could shatter completely. But she didn't go far. And she didn't forget. And Danny let her go.
For now.
Sloane hadn't stopped thinking about the kiss. Not for 1 second. Not while brushing her teeth or answering emails or listening to Jamie ramble about her cousin's disastrous engagement. The feel of Danny's lips, soft, restrained, maddening, lingered like a ghost touch she couldn't shake. And it hadn't been some drunken party accident or a moment of mistletoe-mandated fun. It had been intentional, deliberate, calculated in the way Danny always did everything. And then nothing. 3 full days passed. Danny didn't speak to her, barely looked at her. In meetings, she was cold and composed, her attention distributed evenly, her tone strictly professional. It was like nothing had happened, and it was driving Sloane out of her mind. She'd almost convinced herself she imagined the whole thing, until she caught Danny standing alone in the hallway outside the 30th floor conference room, staring down at her phone with that same distant tension, jaw tight, fingers clenched. When she saw Sloane, she froze. And then, in a blink, she turned and walked away. No words, no nod, just a quiet retreat. What the hell was happening? Sloane replayed every second of the kiss again.
And again. And again.
Each time wondering if she'd crossed a line. If she'd misread something. If Danny regretted it. But that didn't track. Not with the way she'd looked at her. Not with the way she'd touched her cheek like it mattered. So, why the sudden silence? The question festered. She lasted until Friday. That afternoon, the office emptied early as people ducked out for holiday travel and remote work. By 5, most desks were abandoned. The elevator banks glowed dimly in the soft evening light. Sloane stood by the window of the third floor, watching the snow begin to fall in slow, lazy flakes outside, heart pounding in her chest. Do it, she told herself. Ask her. End the torture. So she took the elevator up, alone. When the doors opened on the 30th floor, the space was silent. No chatter. No ringing phones. Just glass and steel and the faint echo of her own heels. Danny's office light was still on. She was alone, seated at her desk, reading something on her tablet, glasses perched on the bridge of her nose. God, she looked untouchable and exhausted. Sloane didn't knock. She just stepped inside. Danny looked up slowly, blinking. Sloane. Her voice gave away nothing. Am I interrupting? No, a pause. Is something wrong? Yes, Sloane said, sharper than she meant to. You kissed me, and then you disappeared. Danny took off her glasses and set them down with aching precision. That was a mistake. The words hit like ice water. Sloane flinched.
Wow.
Okay. She turned to leave, humiliation hot in her throat, but Danny stood so quickly her chair scraped the floor. Not because I didn't want to, she said, voice suddenly tight. Because I did. Too much. And I can't want you. I'm your boss. Sloane stopped. Turned back. Her heart was a drumbeat in her ears. Then don't be my boss for a second, she said. Be honest. What did it mean to you? Danny looked torn. Angry. Desperate. Everything. One word. Barely breathed. It knocked the air from Sloane's lungs. Then why? Because I'm terrified, Danny interrupted. You're brilliant and kind and you see people really see them, and that's a rare kind of dangerous. And I've built this wall around me for years, and you walked right through it like it was paper. Sloane's voice trembled. So, you're punishing me for that?
No.
I'm punishing myself. Danny looked down. And it's not working. Silence stretched between them, taut and electric. Then Danny took a breath. You deserve more than a secret. You deserve more than hallway kisses and quiet regrets. Then give me more. It came out before Sloane could stop it. Danny's head snapped up. Her eyes locked onto Sloane's with something so raw it made her dizzy. And in the next heartbeat, she was crossing the room. Sloane backed toward the elevator, pulse in her throat, heart in free fall. Danny followed, step for step. The elevator dinged open. They both hesitated, then stepped inside. Alone. The doors slid shut. For a moment neither moved. The silence was unbearable. And then Danny reached out, pressed the emergency stop button, and turned to her. You said one kiss wasn't enough, she murmured. Sloane nodded, eyes wide. Prove it. Danny's mouth was on hers before she could speak. This kiss was nothing like the first. It was fierce, full of weeks of tension and restraint unraveling all at once. Danny's hands were in her hair, on her waist, pulling her closer, and Sloane didn't resist. She fell into it, into her, like a woman falling through ice into heat. Her back hit the wall of the elevator. She gasped against Danny's mouth, felt her smile in response, felt her press closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Sloane touched Danny's cheek with shaking fingers. What now? Danny rested her forehead against hers. Now, I stop pretending I don't want you. And at work. Danny exhaled. We'll figure it out. Sloane didn't know what that meant. But she didn't care. Not right now. Because in this tiny metal box, for the first time, everything felt real. And possible. And worth the risk. The next morning, Sloane woke up with Danny's taste still on her lips. She'd barely slept. Her brain had looped through every second in the elevator, every breathless kiss, every whispered word like it was trying to memorize a dream before it vanished. But it wasn't a dream. It had happened. She'd kissed the CEO of the company.
Twice.
And the second time there was no mistletoe. No excuse. Just truth, laid bare in a metal box between two floors. She'd gone back to her apartment that night trembling, dazed, unsure whether she should laugh or cry or scream into a pillow. She'd chosen all three. Now it was Friday morning and she was standing in front of her closet, running through every possible outfit she owned that didn't scream, "I made out with my boss last night, and I liked it." She settled for neutral. Wide-leg black pants, a cream sweater, hair pulled back, ring off. Not because she wanted to hide, but because she wasn't ready for this to become anyone's business but theirs.
Yet.
The office was quieter than usual. Holiday mode. People counting the hours until their end-of-year PTO. And Sloane really tried, to keep her head down and stay focused. But it was impossible. Every footstep made her heart pound. Every elevator ding made her stomach flip. And when Danny finally appeared near the glass conference room just before lunch, Sloane didn't even pretend to focus on the spreadsheet open in front of her. Danny looked effortlessly composed, wearing a slate gray suit that hugged her frame like it had been made for her, which, knowing Danny, it probably had. Her hair was up, her expression unreadable, but when her gaze flicked towards Sloane's desk, there was something there. Something soft. Something secret. Sloane looked away fast. She could feel the heat rising in her cheeks. She thought she was being subtle until Jamie slid into the chair beside her and whispered, "So, are we going to pretend I didn't see that elevator door close with just the two of you inside yesterday?" Sloane's entire body went rigid. "You what?" "Don't worry," Jamie said, biting into a candy cane like she'd just landed a front-row seat to a scandal. "I didn't tell anyone. Yet." "There's nothing to tell," Sloane muttered, too quickly. Jamie leaned in closer.
Babe.
"I've seen you nervous.
I've seen you panic.
This is different. You're glowing. Which is gross, honestly." "Stop." "Fine." Jamie sat back. "But you should know, people are starting to notice. She keeps looking at you like she's trying to memorize your soul. That's not subtle." Sloane's stomach turned. "Has anyone else said anything?"
"Not yet."
"But you know how this office is. Half of them would sell their own teeth for gossip." Sloane didn't respond, because the idea of anyone knowing, really knowing, terrified her. Not because she was ashamed, but because it would make it real in a way she wasn't sure she was ready for. Later that day, it got worse. She was in the break room refilling her tea when she heard two voices near the door. "You think the rumor's true?" one of them whispered. "About Morrison and that analyst from Third?" Sloane froze. The other laughed. "I doubt it. Morrison's cold as ice. She'd never risk her reputation for someone like her." Sloane didn't breathe.
"Couldn't."
"Still," the first one said, "have you seen the way she looks at her? It's weirdly intense. She probably just likes tormenting people." The door swung open, and the voices cut off abruptly when they saw Sloane standing there. The silence was thick, awkward. She looked at them. Two marketing assistants whose names she couldn't remember, and gave the faintest smile. "Excuse me," she said, brushing past them. Her hands shook the whole way back to her desk. That evening, most of the office had cleared out by 6. Sloane stayed late on purpose, hoping the quiet would calm her down. It didn't. She was gathering her things when she heard footsteps behind her. "You okay?" Danny's voice.
Soft.
Familiar. Too much. Sloane turned, trying to act casual.
"Fine."
"Just finishing up." Danny didn't move closer, but her eyes searched her face. "You heard something. People talk. They always do. They don't think I'm good enough for you." Danny's jaw tensed. "That's bullshit." "It's not the first time I've heard it," Sloane said quietly. "It won't be the last." Danny stepped closer. "And what do you think?" "I think I'm terrified you'll agree with them." The silence stretched. Then Danny's voice dropped to something rough. "Come with me."
Sloane blinked.
"What?" "I'm not doing this here. Come upstairs." Sloane hesitated, but something in Danny's tone left no room for doubt. She followed, up to the 30th floor, into Danny's office. The city lights glittered behind her as Danny closed the door, then turned and locked it. Sloane's breath hitched. "You don't have to prove anything," she whispered. "I'm not." Danny walked toward her. I'm just tired of pretending I don't want you in every way someone can want someone. Sloane's heart stopped. Say that again. No, Danny said, stepping into her space. Let me show you instead. And then she kissed her. Not like before. Not restrained. Not careful. This kiss was hungry.
Claiming.
A quiet war of everything they'd been holding back. Sloane kissed her back just as hard, hands sliding into Danny's hair, fingers curling into fabric, heat pooling low in her stomach. They broke apart only when breath became impossible. Danny's forehead pressed to hers. You are enough, she whispered. More than enough. Sloane trembled. And if they find out, let them. Sloane smiled, eyes shining. That's bold. No, Danny said, brushing a kiss to her temple. You are. I'm just trying to catch up. The corporate gala was the kind of event Sloane usually dreaded. Too many people, too much pretense, and the unspoken pressure to pretend she wasn't completely out of her element in a room full of champagne flutes and $1,000 watches. But this time, she had a bigger problem. A much bigger problem. Danny Morrison would be there. In public. In heels and diamonds and silence. And Sloane had no idea which version of Danny would show up. The CEO, who could command a room with a glance? Or the woman who had kissed her breathless behind locked doors just nights before? Sloane stared at herself in the mirror, anxiety crawling beneath her skin. She'd chosen a dark green satin dress that hugged her curves without being too bold, her hair pinned back in a soft, classic twist. Understated. Elegant. Harmless. She didn't feel harmless. She felt like she might explode. Her Uber pulled up to the downtown hotel ballroom 30 minutes late, and even then, Sloane hovered outside the entrance too long. When she finally walked in, the space sparkled with gold decor and soft jazz. Her ID badge was replaced by a name tag in calligraphy. The bar glowed. The energy buzzed. She spotted Jamie near the dessert table, holding a champagne glass like a weapon. You look like someone about to commit a felony, Jamie muttered as Sloane approached. What happened to playing it cool? Playing it cool died the moment she locked a door behind me. Jamie choked on her drink. Excuse me? Not here, Sloane hissed, eyes darting around the room. Later. Maybe. If I survive. Then she saw her. Danny, at the far end of the ballroom, surrounded by board members and high-level executives. Hair swept into a sleek bun. A black dress that was simple and deadly. Eyes scanning the room until they landed on Sloane. And stayed. Sloane felt it like a touch. She turned away too quickly, breath short. She's just looking. It doesn't mean anything. But it did. Because the weight of that gaze didn't leave her all night. Danny never approached, never broke formation, but she watched. Between speeches and toasts and stiff corporate laughter, their eyes found each other again and again. And every time, it made Sloane's heart trip. She tried to distract herself. She danced with coworkers. Laughed too hard at someone's story. But nothing helped. Not when she could feel Danny's attention like static across the room. When the formalities died down and the music grew louder, Sloane ducked into a hallway near the back of the ballroom to breathe. It was quiet there. Dim, a single wall sconce buzzed above her. She leaned against it, chest tight. And then footsteps.
Slow.
Deliberate. Her heart knew before her eyes did. Danny turned the corner. Their eyes met. No one spoke. She walked toward Sloane like a storm in slow motion. This is dangerous, Sloane whispered. Danny stopped a breath away. So is wanting something and doing nothing about it. There are 100 people in that room. And I've only looked at you. The hallway shrank. The silence stretched. Sloane's voice cracked. You're not supposed to touch me here. I'm not supposed to want you at all. But you do. Danny didn't answer.
She didn't have to.
Because the next moment, she stepped into Sloane's space and cupped her jaw, thumb brushing across her cheek. Tell me to stop, she murmured. Sloane didn't.
Couldn't.
Instead, she pulled Danny down and kissed her like she'd been holding it in for hours, because she had. The kiss was hungry. Secret. Frantic. Like the world would catch fire if they stopped. Danny pressed her against the wall, one hand gripping her waist, the other sliding into her hair. It was chaos, it was wrong, it was so good it hurt. They pulled apart only when voices echoed nearby. Danny swore softly and stepped back. Sloane's lipstick was smeared. Danny's chest rose and felt like she'd run a mile. "We can't do this here," Sloane said, breathless. "Then come to my car." Sloane hesitated. Danny stepped closer again, voice low. "No hotel rooms. No hiding.
Just you.
In my world. Tonight. What happens if I say yes?" Danny's gaze was molten. "Everything you've been thinking about since that first kiss under the mistletoe." Sloane's mouth went dry. Her body ached. But her heart felt like it was about to jump out of her chest. "Give me 5 minutes." Danny nodded once, then disappeared into the dark. Sloane waited, hands trembling. When she finally stepped out of the hallway and back into the golden ballroom, she felt the burn of Danny's kiss on her mouth, the promise of more in her bones, and one thought louder than all the others. She wasn't walking away this time. The city blurred by outside the tinted windows, Christmas lights flashing in streaks of red and gold as the black Mercedes glided through the night. Sloane sat in the passenger seat, legs crossed tight, fingers curled in her lap, trying to keep herself from shaking. From nerves. From anticipation. From everything. Danny hadn't said a word since they left the gala. She drove like she did everything else, controlled, graceful, silent. But the tension between them was thick enough to cut through. The music on the radio played low, something classical and haunting. Sloane stared straight ahead, her breath shallow. "What are you doing?" The question pulsed behind her eyes, but she already knew the answer. She was doing what she hadn't let herself do in 2 years. She was following the fire. They stopped outside a private parking garage beneath an upscale apartment building Sloane didn't recognize. Danny reached over, her hand brushing Sloane's thigh lightly. Not possessive. Not urgent. Just there. "You don't have to come up," Danny said, voice soft but steady. "This doesn't have to be anything more than what it already is." Sloane looked at her, her jaw tight with restraint, her mouth pink from the kiss in the hallway, her eyes, so much in them. Hope.
Fear.
Longing. "But I want it to be more," Sloane whispered. Danny didn't answer, just turned off the engine, stepped out, and opened Sloane's door. The elevator ride up was silent, both of them still, close but not touching. It was a suspense neither of them dared break. Not yet. The apartment was exactly what Sloane expected, and nothing like she imagined. Minimalist.
Clean.
Expensive. But not cold. Soft lighting. Bookshelves full. A fire flickering in the corner. Danny dropped her keys in a dish near the door and turned to face her. "Are you afraid?" she asked quietly. Sloane didn't lie. "Yes." Danny nodded. "Me too." That honesty broke something open between them. They moved at the same time. Danny crossed the room, took Sloane's face in her hands, and kissed her, harder, deeper, like all the control she carried had finally cracked. Sloane melted into her, arms wrapping tight around Danny's back, clutching at the smooth fabric of her dress. The kiss deepened, slow but insistent, and when Danny's hands slid down her waist, her back, pulling her close, Sloane let out a sound that was almost a gasp. Danny responded with a low groan that vibrated against her mouth. "Bedroom," Sloane whispered against her lips. Danny hesitated for one breathless moment, then nodded. She led her down a narrow hallway, past dark rooms, into a space with tall windows, soft linen sheets, and the kind of silence that begged to be filled. Sloane didn't even remember how her dress came off. Only that Danny undressed her with devastating care, like she was unwrapping something rare, precious, something she'd waited years to touch. The rest was a blur of sensation. Skin on skin. Fingers tracing trembling lines. Mouth searching and claiming. Sighs swallowed between sheets. Sloane had never been touched like that. Like she mattered. Like her pleasure was sacred. Like the woman above her knew every inch of her was worth worshipping. When it was over, or rather, when the high had crested and left them breathless, tangled, and limp beneath the covers, Danny lay on her side, arm draped over Sloane's waist, face half buried in her hair. For a while, there was only breathing.
Soft. Quiet. Real.
"You're not what I expected," Danny said finally, voice rough with exhaustion. "You're not either," Sloane replied, brushing her fingers across Danny's wrist. "I thought you'd be colder. I thought I'd be emptier." Sloane turned to face her. "Are you?" Danny didn't answer right away. She reached up and touched the ring still on Sloane's finger. "Do you know why I gave you that? Because I mentioned the stone once in a meeting?" Danny smiled faintly. "That wasn't the only reason." Sloane waited. Danny exhaled. "Last year, I saw you crying in the stairwell." Sloane blinked. "What?" "It was late. Everyone was gone. I'd stayed for a call with Tokyo. You didn't see me. You were sitting on the steps, just breaking." Sloane's throat tightened. She remembered that night. She'd gotten the news her mom's cancer had returned. She'd held it together all day until the silence of the stairwell had been too much. "I watched you for a few seconds," Danny said. "I should have left, but I couldn't. You were trying so hard not to make a sound. Like your grief wasn't allowed. And something in me just cracked. I haven't stopped looking since." Sloane's eyes stung. "You never said anything." "I didn't know how." Danny's voice cracked then. "You were the first person who made me want to break every rule I made for myself. And I hated you for it. Until I didn't." The room was still. Sloane touched Danny's face gently. "You didn't scare me tonight," she whispered. "You made me feel chosen." Danny closed her eyes, just for a second, as if the words hit too deep. "You are. God, you are." They fell asleep tangled in each other, breath synchronized, hearts raw and open. But as the sky began to lighten outside and the city stirred again, neither of them could shake the truth now blooming between them. This wasn't just lust. It never had been. And that meant the fall was going to be steeper than either of them ever planned for. The scent of expensive sheets and fading perfume clung to Sloane's skin when she opened her eyes. Morning light filtered through the tall windows of Danny's bedroom, casting soft gold across the minimalist decor. For a split second, she didn't remember where she was. And then she turned her head. Danny was sitting in the window seat, legs curled beneath her, a cup of coffee in one hand, her silk robe barely tied. She looked out at the skyline like it held answers. Like if she stared long enough, the world would reveal what the hell they were supposed to do next. "You didn't wake me," Sloane said, voice still thick with sleep. Danny turned slightly, the corner of her mouth lifting in that way that always made Sloane feel like the only person in the room. "You looked peaceful. I didn't want to ruin it." Sloane sat up, tugging the sheets around her. "I don't feel peaceful. I feel exposed." Sloane hesitated.
Yes.
But not in a bad way. Danny stood and walked over, placing the mug on the nightstand before sitting beside her on the edge of the bed. She didn't touch her.
Not yet.
"I should have told you sooner," she said. "About the stairwell. About how long I'm glad you didn't." Sloane smiled faintly. "If you had, I probably would have run. You still might." "I might." She paused. "But not today." Danny exhaled, her shoulders easing. She looked softer in the daylight. Less like the myth and more like the woman Sloane had tasted, held, watched fall apart in the dark. "I want to see you again," Sloane said quietly. "Outside of work. If that's even possible." "I want that too." Danny reached out then, brushed a thumb across her cheek. "But we both know what we're walking into." And they did. Monday came with claws. The office felt different the moment Sloane stepped out of the elevator. The stairs were subtle but sharp. Conversations that paused when she walked by. Jamie met her near the kitchen with a look that made her stomach drop. "Okay, I tried to stop it," Jamie whispered, handing her a decaf latte, "but it's already everywhere." "What is?" "The rumor. That you're sleeping with her." Sloane froze.
What?
"Someone sent an anonymous tip to HR," Jamie said, eyes wide. "They're not naming names, but come on. Half the office saw the way you two looked at each other at the gala. It doesn't take a genius." Sloane's breath went shallow. "Do they know for sure?" "Not yet." but it's only a matter of time.
Shit.
She tried to work,
She really did.
but her hands shook over the keyboard. Every ping of a new message made her flinch. By lunch, she was spiraling. And Danny hadn't even looked at her. She stayed locked in her office, blinds drawn, schedule blocked out. Sloane didn't blame her. This was more than reputations now, it was their jobs. Their lives. The ring on her finger suddenly felt like it weighed 100 pounds. That afternoon, her manager called her into a quick check-in. The tone was friendly. Too friendly. "Just wanted to see how you're doing, Sloane," he said with a thin smile. "There's been a lot of chatter." "Chatter?" she asked, feigning innocence. "You know how offices get. End-of-year gossip. It's probably nothing, but HR is obligated to follow up on anything that could suggest a conflict of interest. You understand, right?" She nodded. "Of course." "Good. Then we'll keep this informal. Just a heads up to be cautious. Appearances matter." The word appearances hit her like a slap. That evening, she waited until most of the office had cleared before going upstairs. Danny's assistant was gone. The lights were dim. She knocked once, then stepped inside. Danny stood by the window, hands in her pockets. The look on her face made Sloane's heart hurt. "You heard," Sloane said. "I heard." "HR?" Danny nodded. "They're circling."
Carefully.
"I haven't been directly confronted yet, but I will be." "I'm sorry." Danny turned to her. "Don't be. We didn't do anything wrong." "That doesn't mean it won't cost us." A long silence stretched between them. Then Sloane spoke, voice barely a whisper. "Do you regret it?" Danny crossed the room in 2 strides. "Don't ask me that." "Why not?" "Because if you think for 1 second I regret touching you, holding you, loving you," she stopped. The word hung between them like lightning. Sloane stared. "What did you just say?" Danny's eyes flashed. "Nothing. I didn't. No." "Say it again." Danny looked away. It slipped. "I didn't mean." Sloane stepped closer. "You didn't mean it? Or you didn't mean to say it?" Danny's mouth tightened. "Does it matter?" "It matters to me." Danny's voice was raw now. "I meant it." Sloane's throat closed. "Say it." "I love you," Danny whispered. "Okay? I didn't plan to."
I didn't want to.
"But I do." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full. Of everything Sloane had never let herself imagine. She took Danny's hand. Held it tight. "I think I do too." Danny let out a breath that sounded like surrender. They stood there for a moment, heads bowed together, hands clasped like lifelines. "So what now?"
Sloane asked.
Danny's answer was immediate. "We don't hide. We don't lie. We handle this like adults. And if HR asks, I'll tell them the truth. That nothing happened until recently. That it never affected work. That I didn't favor you or promote you or give you any advantage. They might not believe us." "Then let them fire me," Danny said. Sloane's heart stopped. "You'd walk away? If it meant protecting you?" Danny cupped her face again, thumb brushing a tear Sloane hadn't realized was falling.
Yes.
"Every time." But Sloane shook her head.
No.
"We're not doing that. We fight this. Together. No one walks away." Danny looked at her like she was a miracle. Like she was sunlight after years of rain. "Okay," she said softly. "Together." They didn't kiss. Not then. Not in that office. Not with so much at stake. But when Sloane turned to leave, Danny touched her hand and whispered, "Don't forget I said it." Sloane looked back, eyes shining. "I won't."
You said you loved me.
That changes everything.
It did.
And outside the glass walls of the office, the storm kept brewing. But inside, Sloane had never felt more certain. This wasn't the end. This was the beginning of the fight, for their future, their love, and the right to have it without shame. The silence that settled over Sloane's desk on Tuesday morning was a different kind of heavy. Not the silence of peace, or even the silence of tension. It was the kind of silence that hummed with knowing. People didn't look at her directly anymore. They looked past her, around her, through her. The air carried the static of whispers barely held back. She tried to drown it out. Focused on work.
Checked emails.
Recalculated end-of-year numbers. But her mind wasn't in spreadsheets. It was in Danny's office. It was on Danny's lips. It was on the way she'd said I love you like it hurt, like it was inevitable, like it was hers and no one else's. She hadn't stopped thinking about that moment. That confession. It had pulled something loose in Sloane. A need to stop hiding. To stop pretending. To stop shrinking. And yet there she was.
Hiding.
Pretending. Shrinking. Her phone buzzed. A single text. D. HR wants a meeting. I scheduled it. 2 p.m. I'm ready. Are you? Sloane stared at the screen. Her fingers hovered. She wanted to type. Yes. But she typed. Do you want me there? The response came instantly. D. Always. When 2 p.m. came, Sloane sat frozen in her chair. Danny passed by once, her heels clicking a steady rhythm down the corridor, but she didn't glance at her. That restraint was killing them both. And yet necessary.
For now.
Jamie slid into the seat across from her again, this time less playful. You okay? Sloane nodded. No. Do you want me to key someone's car? That got a weak laugh. Maybe. Seriously. I don't like how they're talking about you. About her. Like they know anything. Sloane looked up. Do you think I was stupid? No, Jamie's voice softened. I think you were brave. And maybe a little reckless. But love doesn't ask for permission first. It just happens. At 2:07 p.m., Danny's office door opened again. She stood in the doorway, composed as ever. Her eyes flicked across the floor, landed on Sloane, and for just 1 second, her guard dropped. The look wasn't obvious. It wasn't grand, but Sloane felt it. A look that said, you're not alone in this. Whatever happens, I won't let go first. And just like that, something shifted in Sloane. She stood, quietly, walked across the room under a dozen invisible eyes, and followed Danny into the room. The blinds were drawn. A representative from HR sat at the long table. Neutral smile. Legal pad. The kind of presence that made your spine straighten even when you'd done nothing wrong. Sloane sat beside Danny. Close but not touching. Danny spoke first. We understand there's been speculation, she said evenly. We want to be transparent about the facts. The HR rep raised a brow. You're confirming a personal relationship exists? A consensual one, Danny clarified. It began outside of work hours. No company policy was violated. No direct supervision occurred. Ms. Westfield is in your company division. She reports to a separate manager. I've never approved a raise or promotion for her. If you pull the records, you'll see that. The rep turned to Sloane. And you, Ms. Westfield? Do you confirm this timeline? Sloane's voice was clear. Yes. Do you feel you were coerced in any way? Absolutely not. Has Ms. Morrison offered you any financial or professional incentive tied to your involvement? No. The questions continued for 30 minutes. It felt like being stripped bare, one careful question at a time. But Danny never wavered. And neither did Sloane. When it ended, the HR rep closed her notebook. Thank you. We'll be following up after a formal review. In the meantime, we suggest maintaining professional boundaries during business hours. Danny nodded once. Understood. The door closed behind them, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Danny turned. You were amazing. I feel like I'm going to throw up. You didn't show it. Sloane looked up at her. Do you think they'll let this go? Honestly, Danny sighed. No. I think someone wants to make an example of me. Sloane swallowed hard. Then let's give them something to talk about. Danny blinked. What does that mean? It means I'm tired of hiding, Sloane said. I don't want to pretend anymore. You want to go public? I want to be yours. Fully. In daylight. With witnesses. Danny stared at her like she was seeing her for the first time. Then she reached out, brushed a stray hair from Sloane's cheek, and whispered, Come to the company New Year's brunch with me. As your plus one? As my partner. That's this Sunday. I know. People will lose their minds. Let them. Sloane smiled. Okay. That night, everything exploded. Around 9 p.m., Jamie called. You saw it. Saw what? The post. What post? Check your email.
Sloane did.
It was a forwarded company-wide message from HR, vague and impersonal. But attached to it was a screenshot someone had leaked, a blurry photo of her and Danny in the hallway at the gala. Their faces were visible, their proximity undeniable. It was time-stamped. The caption read, "So much for professionalism." Sloane's stomach dropped. Danny called less than a minute later. We've been leaked. I know. Someone's coming after us. What do we do? We hold the line. And if they come harder? Danny's voice was steel. Then I come harder back. The next day, Sloane walked into the office in a simple black blouse and trousers, but with her hair pinned up and the rose gold ring glinting proudly on her finger. And when Danny passed her in the hallway, she paused. Not too close. Not unprofessional, but enough. Enough that her voice could carry when she said, "Morning, Ms. Westfield." "Morning, Ms. Morrison." And both of them smiled. Small, sharp, defiant. The whole floor saw it. And that was the point. The whispers would keep coming. The eyes would keep watching.
But so would they.
And by Sunday, the world would no longer guess. It would know. The marble floors of the Marriott downtown glistened under the soft winter light as Sloane stepped through the revolving doors, heels clicking with every cautious step. Her breath caught the moment she saw the main ballroom. White linens draped over round tables, towers of champagne flutes, arrangements of silver-dusted pine branches, and soft ivory roses. It was elegant, intimidating, corporate luxury dressed up for the holidays. People were already gathered in small groups, laughing, networking, judging. And Sloane, despite her sleek navy dress and hours of rehearsal in front of the mirror, felt like she was walking into a lion's den with a smile made of glass. The moment her name tag was clipped to her chest, Sloane Westfield, business analyst, she felt it. The weight, the eyes, the tension in the air, thick like fog. She could hear it in the way conversations dipped as she walked past. In the way people didn't say hello. In the too bright smiles that faded the moment her back was turned. It was worse than she imagined. But then, Danny arrived. And everything shifted. The CEO stepped through the ballroom doors in a floor-length charcoal coat over a tailored black suit with no tie, crisp collar open, her hair slicked back in a low chignon that revealed diamond stud earrings, and a scar Sloane had never noticed before, just below her jaw. She looked like control personified. Power made flesh. But her eyes, those eyes, searched the crowd until they found Sloane. And when they did, her entire expression changed. For a moment, Sloane forgot how to breathe. Danny crossed the room with deliberate steps, unhurried, unapologetic. The crowd parted for her, not because they respected her, but because they didn't know what she was about to do. Danny stopped in front of Sloane.
"Hi," she said simply.
"Hi," Sloane replied, voice tight with nerves. "You look beautiful. You look dangerous." Danny's smile was barely there. Only to people who think I'm going to stay quiet. And then, in one smooth, devastating motion, Danny reached for Sloane's hand, just fingertips at first, and slid their fingers together. Not a hug, not a kiss, just enough contact to set the room on fire. Gasps didn't echo, but Sloane felt them. Felt the shift ripple outward like a soundless explosion. Danny leaned in slightly, just close enough for Sloane to smell the citrus and sandalwood on her skin. "We don't flinch," she murmured. "We don't fold." Sloane nodded, spine straighter. "Let them look. They will." They walked side by side to the far table reserved for upper management. As they sat, Sloane beside Danny, not across, the effect was immediate. Some heads turned away. Some narrowed their eyes. A few board members muttered under their breath. And one woman in particular, seated diagonally across from them, didn't bother hiding her disdain. Catherine Ward, CFO. Ice in a pantsuit. Danny's biggest obstacle on the executive team. Her voice rang loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Quite the display this morning, Danny. Didn't know the company policy changed regarding personal entanglements." Danny didn't blink. It hasn't. And this isn't an entanglement. It's a relationship. Fully consensual. Fully declared. Catherine's smile was all venom.
Right.
Very professional of you to debut it at a corporate brunch. Nothing says leadership like sleeping with your subordinates. Sloane flinched. Danny's hand tightened slightly over hers. Careful, Catherine, Danny said, voice low and sharp. You're stepping into dangerous territory. Just voicing what everyone's already whispering. Then whisper it. Because if you defame an employee in front of witnesses, you'll be dealing with more than HR. Catherine's smile faltered. Just for a second. But it was enough. Let's eat, Danny said smoothly. Unless your appetite for gossip ruined your appetite for food. A few nearby executives shifted uncomfortably. But no one said anything.
The brunch dragged.
Sloane picked at her food. Danny remained a composed statue of elegance and quiet fury. But it wasn't until the toasts began that the final strike landed. Catherine rose near the end of the program and offered a speech dripping with passive aggression. Here's to a new year full of growth, professionalism, and integrity. May our leaders remember that example is everything, and discretion is not a weakness, but a virtue. She raised her glass. A few people clapped. Most stayed silent. Danny didn't move. Not until Catherine sat down again. Then she stood. Calmly. No glass in hand. I hadn't planned to speak today, she said, her voice carrying just enough to command the room, but it seems the spirit of transparency is in the air. She glanced once at Sloane, then back at the crowd. For the past 2 years, I've watched this company grow. I've watched the people inside it thrive. And I've also watched the cracks beneath the surface deepen, where judgment hides behind policy, where excellence is questioned not because it's lacking, but because it's inconvenient. Her eyes settled on Catherine. I entered into a consensual relationship with someone who challenges me, humbles me, and reminds me that leadership isn't about power, it's about courage. We followed the rules. But even if we hadn't, I'd still choose her. Gasps this time. Real ones. Audible. Danny stepped closer to Sloane. I'll understand if the board decides this is unacceptable. I'll understand if this room resents me. But I will not apologize for love. Not when it's real. Not when it's honest. She looked back at Sloane. Her voice softened. Not when it's you. The applause didn't start right away. Just stunned silence. Then one clap. Then another. Then a ripple of sound as some executives stood. Others stayed seated, lips tight. But enough stood. Enough clapped. Enough said, we see you. We hear you. We don't agree with them. Catherine stayed frozen. Face like ice. Danny sat down beside Sloane. Exhaled like she'd been holding it in for weeks. That was a gamble, Sloane whispered. A necessary one. Do you think it worked? Danny met her eyes. We'll find out tomorrow. When the brunch ended, Danny escorted Sloane out through the side entrance, away from the stairs. You okay? She asked as they stepped into the cold. I don't know. Sloane's voice shook. I think I'm still waiting for the knife to fall. Let them try. Danny opened the car door for her. I'm done playing polite with people who think love is a liability. They sat in silence as the driver pulled away. Then Danny reached across the seat and took Sloane's hand again. No performance. No pressure. Just warmth. Just certainty. You didn't flinch, Danny said. You didn't either. I wanted to. Sloane looked at her. You said you'd understand if they fired you. I meant it. But I won't let that happen. Danny turned to her, eyes fierce. And if they try to comfort you, then I'll burn the building down, Sloane said, not smiling. I mean it. Danny blinked, then laughed.
Low.
Unrestrained.
Real.
God, I love you. And for the first time, Sloane said it back. I love you too. And this time, they both believed it would survive whatever came next. Monday arrived like a warning. Cold and brittle. The kind of day that felt stretched too thin before it even began. Sloane stared at her closet, fingers numb as she tried to choose something neutral. Safe. Unthreatening. As if the right sweater could make the entire company forget what happened the day before. As if anything about this could be forgotten. By the time she arrived at the office, the energy on her floor had changed completely. People weren't just whispering anymore. They were watching her outright. Some with interest, some with irritation, some with that strange expression people wear when they're fascinated by something they don't understand. Sloane didn't greet anyone. She kept her head down, walked to her desk, logged in, pretended she didn't feel like her skin had been peeled off and left exposed. At 9:14 a.m., an email arrived. Subject: private check-in, 30th floor conference room. 9:30. It was from the executive operations manager. Sloane stared at the screen. The last time she'd received a message like that, it was about promotion cycles. This time she knew better. At 9:28, she stood, walked slowly to the elevator. Her pulse pounded through her entire body, fast and hollow. The doors opened. When she stepped into the 30th floor conference room, 3 people were already seated at the long glass table. 2 board members and Catherine Ward. Danny wasn't there. That detail alone made her throat go dry. "Please, Ms. Westfield," one of the men said, motioning to a chair across from them. "We appreciate your time." She sat slowly, smoothed her hands over her skirt, didn't speak. Catherine folded her hands, smile cold and tight. "We want to start by acknowledging that your recent visibility has raised questions." "Understandably. Questions?" Sloane echoed. "Yes," the other board member said. "About boundaries, about discretion, about propriety, and more than anything, about what's best for the company." Sloane's mouth tasted like copper. "I haven't violated any policies." "Correct," Catherine said. "Technically. But public perception is complicated. We've spoken at length about how to minimize fallout, internally and externally." The man across the table slid a folder toward her. "We'd like to offer you a transition package." Sloane didn't touch it. "What does that mean?" "It means a clean exit," Catherine said smoothly. "You resign quietly. Receive a generous severance. Letters of recommendation. No marks on your record. And the company avoids the media storm of firing an employee in a relationship with a C-level executive." Sloane stared. "You're asking me to leave. We're inviting you to protect your future. And ours. Why not ask Danny to leave? Her role is less replaceable." The words landed like a slap. Sloane sat there, frozen. "So the problem isn't the relationship. It's which one of us matters more to you." Catherine didn't deny it. "You're talented, Sloane. But you're not essential." Sloane's voice dropped to something sharp. "Then why did she fight to stay beside me in that room yesterday? Why did she put everything on the line if I'm so replaceable?" The board member sighed. "Ms. Morrison is a brilliant leader. But even brilliant people let emotions cloud judgment. We're here to offer clarity." "No," Sloane said. "You're here to punish her without touching her. You're trying to break her through me." Catherine tilted her head. "No one's forcing you to decide now. Take a few days. Think about it." "I don't need a few days." Sloane pushed the folder back across the table. "I'm not leaving." The silence that followed was absolute. Then Catherine's voice turned crisp. "You may regret that." "Maybe," Sloane said. "But she won't." She stood and walked out without another word. Her hands shook all the way down the elevator, but her spine stayed straight. When the doors opened, Danny was there, waiting, like she knew, like she felt it. "They called you in," Danny said quietly. "I'm sorry. Did you know that they might?" Danny hesitated. "Yes." "Did you try to stop them?" "Yes." "Did it work?" "No." Sloane swallowed the hurt, the betrayal, the ache. "They offered me a severance." "What?" "Told me I'm not essential. That if I walk away, it's clean for everyone." Danny looked like she might explode. "I'll go to them right now." "No." Sloane stepped forward. "No, you won't. Because that's what they want. They want us rattled. They want us desperate. They want to watch you beg and break and bleed until you give me up." Danny's voice cracked. "And I never will." "Then don't." Sloane cupped her face. "But don't try to protect me by sacrificing yourself either. We are not their puppets." "I hate this," Danny whispered. "I know. I hate that I can't make it stop. You can't. Sloane leaned in, forehead against hers. But you can hold my hand while it burns. Always. That afternoon, Sloane returned to her desk like nothing happened. Jamie cornered her immediately. What did they say? They asked me to leave. Jamie went pale. What? It's fine. I said no. Are you okay? No, Sloane said honestly. But I will be. She got back to work. Not because she didn't care, but because she did. Because if she let them rattle her now, they'd win. At 5:30, Danny appeared again. This time, not in secret. She walked down the aisle of cubicles, past every whispering coworker, and stopped at Sloane's desk. I'm taking you to dinner, she said, voice firm. No more hiding. People are staring. Let them. Sloane stood, took Danny's hand. Then let's give them something worth watching. And they left the office, hand in hand, in front of everyone. Not because they didn't care, but because they were done letting fear win. The notification came through at 9:03 a.m. Subject: Company-wide memo. Executive leadership update. Sloane didn't open it right away. She didn't have to. The shift in the office atmosphere said it all. A sharp drop in volume, a ripple of unreadable expressions, the way people glanced toward the elevators like something sacred had been broken. Jamie was the first to say it out loud. She's suspended. Sloane's hands froze above her keyboard. What? It's in the memo. Effective immediately, Danny Morrison will be placed on administrative leave, pending internal review. The words felt like lead in her chest. Sloane clicked the email open and scanned it. It was cold, impersonal, sterile. A few sentences stating that the board was conducting a leadership audit, effective immediately. No mention of why. No mention of her. Just an executive decision, clinical and quiet, wrapped in neutral language. But the meaning was clear. They got what they wanted. She stood. Jamie grabbed her arm.
Sloane.
Don't do anything yet. Where is she? Don't. Where is she? Jamie looked away. They asked her to pack up her office this morning before people got in. Sloane's stomach turned.
She ran. Took the stairs.
When she reached the 30th floor, it was mostly empty, silent, tense, like someone had died. Danny's door was open. Her desk was nearly bare. Boxes on the floor. Papers neatly stacked. The woman herself stood by the window, arms crossed, posture rigid, like a statue built to keep from crumbling. They didn't even look at me, she said without turning around. They sent someone from legal. Told me I'd be contacted with next steps. When? Sloane's voice cracked. When did this happen? An hour ago. Why didn't you tell me? Danny turned then, her expression carefully neutral. Because it doesn't change what matters. You were suspended, Danny. They're bluffing. Trying to push me to resign, so they don't have to deal with the optics of firing me. Will it work? Not unless I let it. Sloane crossed the room, stopped in front of her. I want to fix this. You can't. Don't say that. This isn't your fight. Yes, she said fiercely. It is. Danny's face finally cracked. I don't want you caught in the blast. I am the blast. Sloane grabbed her hand. They're doing this because of us. And I'm not walking away just because you're the one bleeding first. Danny stared at her, then pulled her into a kiss, desperate, angry, full of fire. If I lose this job, then you build something better. And you, I'll be wherever you are. Danny's hand clenched around hers. I hate this. I know. I hate that I can't make it stop. You can't. Sloane leaned in, forehead against hers. But you can hold my hand while it burns. Always. That afternoon, the building pulsed with rumors. Some said Danny had resigned. Others said she was being investigated for inappropriate conduct. The board refused to clarify. The office was left to simmer in confusion and judgment. But Sloane didn't hide. She walked tall, held her head up, and then she called someone she hadn't spoken to in months. Her cousin worked in public relations. High level. Corporate crisis management. She picked up on the second ring. Sloane? It's been forever. I need a favor. Personal or nuclear? Somewhere in between. By morning, the strategy was in place. Step 1. Leak the timeline. Not scandalously, strategically. A trusted journalist published a short piece highlighting how Sloane and Danny had disclosed their relationship to HR before the New Year's brunch. How Danny had recused herself from Sloane's professional reviews for over a year. How HR had already conducted its inquiry and found no technical violations. Step 2. Publish a staff letter. Anonymous. Written from a collective group of mid-level employees, expressing concern not about the relationship, but about the retaliation. About how women in leadership were disproportionately targeted when they broke unwritten rules. About how Danny's track record as CEO included record profits, increased retention, and a cultural overhaul that had previously been praised. Step 3. Control the narrative. Paint it not as a scandal but as silencing. A corporation punishing a woman for loving someone while doing her job better than anyone else had in a decade. It took 48 hours. And suddenly, the tide shifted. Articles appeared.
Tweets.
Internal Slack channels buzzed with debates. A petition circulated, not just from Danny's team, but employees from departments she'd never even directly touched. Bring her back. By Friday morning, Sloane was called into HR again. But this time, they didn't have a folder. They had a problem. You're aware of the online attention, the rep said stiffly. We'd like to ask if you had anything to do with the leaks. Sloane smiled politely. Wouldn't know a thing about it. This is highly unorthodox. So, was suspending your CEO for falling in love? It's not about that, isn't it? The rep fell silent. And Sloane, calm and collected, stood. Danny Morrison will be reinstated. Or this company's going to learn the hard way what happens when it tries to erase the wrong woman. She walked out. Head high. At 4:12 p.m., her phone buzzed. A text.
D. They called.
They want to meet Monday. I think it's working. Sloane replied without hesitation. Then let's finish what we started. That night, she sat on her couch alone, wine glass in hand, heart pounding. She didn't know what Monday would bring. But for the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid of being seen. She was fighting. She was standing. And she wasn't standing alone. Danny stood at the edge of the boardroom table like she wasn't the one on trial. Like the last 2 weeks hadn't been a corporate bloodbath wrapped in passive-aggressive emails, legal half-threats, and backroom deals disguised as reputation management. She wore black. Of course she did. A sleek, high-collared blouse tucked into tailored trousers, and not a single accessory except the watch on her wrist and the set of steel in her eyes. Sloane watched through the glass wall from the far end of the corridor, her heart clawing at her ribs. She wasn't allowed in the meeting. Executive only. But Danny had squeezed her hand before walking in, and the look she gave her, the silent "don't worry, I've got this," had spoken louder than any strategy could. Inside, 12 board members sat in near-perfect formation. On the surface, they looked calm, diplomatic. But Sloane could read tension now like a second language. She saw the way some of them fidgeted with pens or watched the clock too often. The way 2 of them whispered to each other behind forced smiles. And then there was Catherine Ward, CFO, queen of the long game, who sat at the center like she was already planning Danny's funeral. The door closed. Sloane couldn't hear what was being said. She didn't need to. She could feel it. 30 minutes passed. Then 40. At 52 minutes, Danny stood. No one else did. Not until she collected her binder, straightened her shoulders, and turned toward the door. When she stepped out into the corridor and saw Sloane still waiting, something flickered in her expression, relief and exhaustion, but most of all, love. Deep, tired, unshakable love. How bad was it? Sloane asked, even though she didn't want to know. Danny walked until they were out of view, near the emergency stairwell, and only then did she answer. They want me to stay. Sloane blinked. They what? They're reinstating me. That's good, right? Depends. Danny's voice was flat. They want a press release. Carefully worded. They want to pretend the suspension was a miscommunication. A procedural check. You expected that. I did. So what's wrong? Danny looked her dead in the eyes. They want me to cut you out of the story. The air left Sloane's lungs.
What?
The statement will say there was no relationship, no romantic involvement, no reason to question my leadership. But that's a lie. Exactly. Danny stepped back like the weight of it was pressing on her chest. They'll let me keep my title, my salary, my board seat. If I erase you. Silence crashed between them, loud and unforgiving. You're going to say no, Sloane said, voice trembling. Right? Danny didn't answer. And that was worse than anything. You're thinking about it. I'm thinking about all the people who depend on me, about the team I built, the future I shaped. If I walk away, I lose my leverage. I lose the ability to protect the people who can't speak up. And you think I'm asking you to give that up, aren't you? Sloane's jaw locked. I never asked you to choose. But they are. Then make the right one. Danny's expression cracked. This is the right one for you. Not necessarily for them. What about us? Sloane whispered. Do we get a vote? We're not the ones holding the pen. No, Sloane said quietly. But we're the ones they're trying to erase. Danny looked at her for a long time. Too long. I need time. You already had time. Sloane's voice broke. But if you walk back in there and let them pretend this never happened, then maybe it didn't. Not in the way I thought it did. You don't mean that. I mean every word. Sloane. No, her voice rose. You told me you loved me. You stood by me. You fought for me. And now, when it's inconvenient, you're thinking of letting them wipe it clean? Danny flinched. Just a fraction. But enough. They think I'm a liability, Sloane continued. They want to rewrite the story to make you look untouchable. But I'm not a mistake. I'm not a stain. I'm not something to clean off your resume. Danny stepped forward, voice cracking. You're everything to me. Then prove it. The silence returned, heavy, suffocating, final. Danny didn't speak. Sloane didn't wait. She turned and walked away, each step burning, each breath jagged. She didn't cry until she reached the parking garage. That night, the city was silent. And cold. The kind of cold that seeps through walls. Sloane sat on her couch with the TV on mute and her phone face down. Danny didn't call. Didn't text. Didn't show up. By morning, the press release dropped. Corporate neutral. Clinical. But this time, there was a line, tucked into the bottom paragraph, so subtle most people would miss it. Ms. Morrison's leadership continues to reflect the company's evolving values regarding inclusion, transparency, and respect for personal boundaries. We affirm her right to pursue personal relationships free of prejudice or retaliation. Sloane read it 3 times. Then a 4th. It wasn't bold. It wasn't defiant. But it was true. And then the knock came. She opened the door before the second one landed. Danny stood there, breathless, soaked from the rain. No umbrella. No coat. Just a soaked blouse, trembling hands, and red-rimmed eyes. I couldn't let them erase you, she said, voice raw. I almost did. I almost took the out. But I couldn't sign it until I knew they'd acknowledge it. Acknowledge you.
Us.
I'm sorry it's not more public. I'm sorry I didn't burn it all down. But this was the line I could draw without losing everything we built. Unless you think I already did. Sloane stared at her, then pulled her inside, then kissed her. Not because it was easy, but because it was earned. And when she pulled back, she whispered, You didn't lose everything. I'm still here. Danny exhaled like she hadn't breathed in days. And I'll never let them silence me again. They didn't need a headline.
Or a speech.
Or a grand statement. What they needed was right here, a hand held, a name spoken, a truth chosen. And for the first time in weeks, Sloane believed it wasn't the end. It was the beginning again. The dust didn't settle. It shifted. Slowly. Unevenly. Like aftershocks that kept coming when everyone was already trying to rebuild. In the days following the release, the company acted like nothing had happened. Danny returned to her office with silent stares and tight nods. No applause. No welcome back. Just cold professionalism laced with curiosity and resentment. Sloane felt it too. Some colleagues were supportive in private. Quick glances, soft smiles, a quiet, "I'm glad you're still here." Others avoided her completely. A few were openly cold. She expected that. But what she didn't expect was how steady Danny remained. Not once did she waver. Not once did she apologize again. When they passed each other in the hallway, Danny acknowledged her. When they shared the elevator, she stood close. Not touching, but not avoiding. And that presence, that quiet, unwavering choice, was what made Sloane feel safest. "They want to forget," Danny said one evening, sitting across from her in the corner booth of a restaurant they used to only dream about. "They want to bury this behind numbers and the next quarter's projections. But I won't forget. And I don't want us to act like we were just a headline." Sloane reached across the table, lacing their fingers together. "We weren't." But then came the email. Subject: Opportunity Discussion. It was from the Executive Development Committee. Danny read it first, then sent it to Sloane, no context. Just the email, sitting in her inbox like a question neither of them knew how to answer. They wanted to offer Sloane a promotion. A real one. Senior Strategy Associate. Bigger office. More autonomy. Higher pay. A role that would separate her from Danny's orbit on paper, put her in a new department, under a different chain of command. The implication was obvious. They were extending an olive branch, not just to Sloane, but to the narrative. A tidy bow. "See? We're fair. We reward her. Everything is fine now." "It's strategic," Danny said quietly when they sat on the couch later that night, legs tangled, tension thick between them. "If you accept, it signals that we've moved on in the way they want, that we played by their rules. And if I don't, they'll think we're still a problem. So either I take their offer and validate the system that tried to erase me, or I say no and give them a reason to keep punishing you. It's not fair. None of this has been fair." They sat in silence for a while. The TV buzzed softly in the background, muted. Rain tapped the windows. Danny spoke again. "You should take it." Sloane turned. "What?" "You earned it. Every bit of it. Don't let my war become your wall." "But it feels like a bribe." "Maybe it is. But it doesn't change the fact that you deserve it. Let them twist the story if they want. We know the truth." Sloane didn't respond, because she didn't know what the truth was anymore. Only that every part of her felt split. That night, she lay awake in Danny's arms, thinking about what it meant to stay.
To grow.
To accept. And what it meant to walk away on her own terms. The next morning, she stood in front of the mirror in her small apartment, wearing a navy blue blazer and soft cream blouse. Professional.
Calm.
In control. She practiced her answer a dozen times. None of them sounded like her. Until one did. She walked into the meeting with two members of the committee, both smiling too widely. "We're thrilled about your potential," one said. "You've demonstrated real leadership under pressure," said the other. "And adaptability. And grace." Sloane smiled politely. "Thank you." So, the first asked, "Are you ready to accept?" "No." The word was quiet but absolute. They blinked. "I'm sorry. I'm not accepting the role. Do you mind if we ask why?" "Because you're not offering it to reward my performance. You're offering it to buy my silence. To rewrite my story into something you can control. And I won't participate in that."
Their faces changed.
"Just slightly. Ms. Westfield, this is a generous offer. And I'm respectfully declining it." She stood. "If you ever want to promote me based on merit, without agenda, I'll be here. But I won't be used to clean up your discomfort." She left the room before they could speak again. Her heart was pounding. Her hands shook. But for the first time since this all began, she felt entirely herself. When Danny saw her later that afternoon, she didn't ask. She just pulled her close in the empty hallway and whispered, "You chose yourself." "I chose us," Sloane whispered back, "without letting them rewrite either one of us." Danny exhaled, then kissed her softly, reverently, like the final puzzle piece slipping into place. "You're everything they tried to break. And you're still standing." So are you. We both are. That evening, as they walked out of the building hand in hand, no more secrets, no more roles to perform, Sloane realized that the win wasn't in the title or the spotlight. It was in the love that survived every attempt to silence it. It was in the refusal to be rewritten, and the decision to write their own ending instead. The office felt different now. Not fixed, not healed, but quieter, like the storm had passed and left behind a sky too blue to trust. There were still stares, still whispers, still those who thought they knew the truth because they read a headline or filled in the blanks with their own cynicism. But Sloane didn't care anymore. Not in the way she used to. Not in the way that made her shrink. She walked with her shoulders back now. She spoke with clarity. She worked with the kind of focus that came from knowing who you were and who was standing beside you. Danny had returned to her place at the top, but something had shifted. She was still sharp, still commanding, still dressed in the kind of suits that made entire rooms go silent when she walked in. But her edge wasn't armor anymore. It was choice, intention, and sometimes, when the day allowed it, Sloane would catch her looking through the glass wall of her office, not watching her like a secret, but witnessing her like a story being written in real time. They no longer avoided being seen together. They still didn't flaunt it, but when Danny's hand brushed hers in the hallway, or when they exited the building side by side, they didn't flinch.
It was real now.
And real didn't hide. 3 weeks passed. The holidays dissolved into January. The city returned to its gray rhythm, and the quiet between them began to stretch, not tense, but full. Like something unsaid was pressing between them. One Friday evening, Danny sent a message near the end of the day. D. Come to mine tonight. Don't bring anything.
Just you.
Sloane stared at the text for a long moment. Her stomach fluttered. Not in fear. In anticipation. When she arrived at Danny's apartment, the lights were dimmed. Music played low, something instrumental and slow. The fireplace was lit, and on the coffee table sat 2 glasses of wine and a small velvet box. Her heart stopped. Danny stood near the window, arms crossed lightly, as if unsure how to start. You said once, she said softly, that the best gift wasn't in the box, that it was in the chance to be seen. Sloane nodded. And I meant it. I never forgot that. Danny stepped forward. But this time, the box does matter. Sloane looked down at it, heart hammering. You already gave me a ring, she whispered. That one was a confession, Danny replied. This one is a promise. Slowly, she picked up the box. Opened it. Inside was a ring far simpler than the first. No gemstones. Just a smooth, thin band of rose gold. Elegant, warm, and unmistakably intimate. I'm not asking for forever, Danny said. Not yet. Not before we've had time to breathe. But I want you to know that I'm not going anywhere. That you're not a risk I regret. You're the reason I remembered how to feel. Sloane blinked back, the tears rising fast. This isn't a proposal? No, Danny said, smiling softly. It's a beginning. One I'm choosing. Out loud. With you. Sloane took the ring. Slipped it on her right hand. It fit perfectly. I thought I was the one who noticed the details, she said, voice thick. You taught me how. Danny reached out, cupped her cheek, and kissed her, slowly, fully, with the kind of tenderness that comes after surviving fire. They sat on the couch afterward, curled against each other under a blanket, the world outside muted and far away. Where do you see us in 5 years? Sloane asked quietly. Danny didn't hesitate. Building something. A life. Maybe a company. Maybe a house with windows big enough for sunlight and a kitchen big enough for 2 people who can't cook. Sloane laughed. We'd burn everything. Then we'd order in and dance while the smoke alarm screams. And you? Sloane asked. What do you want? Danny's voice was a whisper. To wake up and know you're still mine. Not because I own you, but because you chose to stay. Sloane kissed her shoulder. Then that's the easiest choice I'll ever make. The night grew quieter. The fire dimmed. And they stayed there, tangled and warm, 2 women who had every reason to walk away, but didn't. Because the best gifts aren't wrapped. They aren't convenient. They don't follow protocol or timing. They're made in hallway glances and elevator silences and risks that feel too big until they aren't. Sloane Westfield didn't just fall in love with a CEO. She fell in love with a woman who noticed her in a room full of people who didn't. And in the end, it wasn't the title or the power or the ring that made her stay. It was the way Danny said her name like a truth. It was the way they survived together, hand in hand, even when the world tried to pull them apart.
And that
was the real story. Not scandal. Not career suicide. Just love, messy, brave, and real. The kind that doesn't ask for permission. The kind that finally comes home. Thank you so much for being here and for believing in this channel. If you feel in your heart, you can donate with super thanks so I can focus more and more on this project. Your support helps me keep creating these love stories and bringing them to life for you. See you in the next video.